Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second video of Pesky Punctuation. In our first video, we focused on properly punctuating our sentences with commas using coordinating conjunctions. In this video, our main goal is to focus on semicolons. And if you're wondering what that one looks like, it's a period above a comma. So we're going to try to use these semicolons correctly today. Now you'll remember from our first video that we learned about the compound sentence. So I just wanted to remind you about this type of sentence, that it has two complete thoughts within it, and sometimes we can link those together. So here we have two separate sentences. Here we have a compound sentence. We've combined them with a comma and. But we don't always have to combine them using this format. So in this video, we're going to learn how to use semicolons to connect our sentences instead. So when we connected our sentences with commas, we used coordinating conjunctions, or fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. But whenever we use those words, we have to use commas because that lets us know that there's more thought to come without a hard pause. Whenever you use a semicolon, on the other hand, you have to use what's called a conjunctive adverb. So that's what takes us to number 2 here. Or you can just use the semicolon by itself without any linking word at all. So we're going to look at how we can do both of those. That brings us to rule number 2. Whenever you use a conjunctive adverb or a longer linking word to make a compound sentence, you must use a semicolon before the long linking word and a comma after it. So if you notice the structure we have here, we start off with a complete sentence. So in this case, Joan played sports. Then we have our conjunctive adverb or linking word. I like to also call it a transition word because I think usually that's when we're transitioning to a separate thought. So here's our transition word, consequently. We follow it with a comma. And then we have our second sentence. So you notice we still have 2 sentences here. The structure is just a little bit more complex. So Joan played sports. Consequently, she liked the book about soccer. You're going to notice there's a hard pause right here where that semicolon is because it is separating the 2 thoughts. A semicolon allows you to separate the 2 thoughts while still keeping them together as all one sentence because they relate to each other. So here's some more examples down below. We have Tara hates roaches. Incidentally, she woke up in the middle of the night with one crawling on her arm. Notice how we have that semicolon after the first sentence, our linking word or transition word, and then we have our second sentence following it up. And then our last one, Dominique likes to eat broccoli. That's a complete thought. Furthermore, she likes to eat cauliflower and green beans. Notice those words just transition you onto a new thought. Okay, so here's some practice for you. We want to add semicolons and commas where they belong in each of the sentences below. Remember that a semicolon goes before your transition word or longer linking word, and the comma goes after that word. So what you have to do in these sentences is find the transition word, place your semicolon before it and your comma after it. So at this time, pause your video and attempt these sentences on your own. Once you've tried it, press play again, and then you'll be able to see my key to check your answers. Okay, let's go over these answers together. So for number 1, none of us knew our lines on Monday. Pause. Here goes your semicolon. Nonetheless, I'm going to put my comma here, and I'm going to try to draw in that semicolon. There we go. So none of us knew our lines on Monday. Pause. Nonetheless, comma, the show opened successfully on Saturday. Number 2, there are many things wrong with my truck. Here goes your semicolon. For example, comma, that's a 2-word linker. It needs an oil change, new tires, and a new battery. And then finally, number 3, you really don't need new shoes. Pause. There's our semicolon. Moreover, comma, you don't have any money. And that's where those would be added. Now guys, if you still have questions on this, there's additional practice in Schoology, and you can always seek help with me in class from a classmate or from me, or you can see me during office hours. So please, please, please let me know if you have any questions on this as we go through this. We're about to move on to our third and final rule. So let's see how we would just use the semicolon by itself. So sometimes we want to use a semicolon by itself if we don't really need a transition word to lead us into that next sentence. So the example here is, I like to read, pause, my wife likes to talk. Here, there's really no need to include a transition word. We're just showing two opposites together in a sentence. Here's what the husband likes to do. Here's what the wife likes to do, and we're combining them all in one. So we can just pause with no transition word. So here's some other examples, and again, I apologize about my subject and verb labeling being out of place. I think that happened when I uploaded, so I'm going to relabel these for you. So the subject in this first one is October days, and then the verb is are, and then beautiful is just an adjective describing what it is, so that completes our thought. So that's sentence number 1. So that's talking about October. We pause because then we're moving on to talk about November. So here we have November days are, and then our adjective gloomy, which completes our thought. So in the second one, we have the subject math, the verb is, and then a pain completes our thought. Our second sentence, grammar, our verb is, and then worse being our adjective. Some of you may agree with that, and that's okay. Hopefully this video will help make grammar a little less painful for you. So let's move on to some practice for rule number 3. Okay, so again, we have a couple sample sentences. In each sentence below, we need to place a semicolon where two sentences should break. Now, all we'll need is a semicolon in these because there's no transition word, so we don't need any extra commas. So just a semicolon. Pause your video now and try to see if you can figure out where the semicolon would go. So where does your first sentence end and your second sentence begin? Once you're ready to check your answers, you can hit play again, but pause now. Okay, so let's go over these answers. The first one, The Hunger Games is a very popular dystopian novel. Pause. There's the end of thought 1, so there goes our semicolon. Divergent is also becoming well known. So we're talking about two separate movies. All right, number 2, winter brings feelings of lifelessness. Pause. Summer brings joy. So we're showing contrast there, and the pause helps us break apart that contrast. And then the last one, loving fully allows the soul to live. Never loving causes it to die. So notice where that pause was, right in the middle. There we'd have that semicolon. All right, so hopefully you got those right. If not, try out some additional practice or come seek me for help. In the next video, we'll move on to some rules with colons. So stay tuned for the next segment. Thanks for listening.